Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live episode of the Leveraging AI podcast, the podcast that shares practical, ethical ways to leverage AI to improve efficiency, grow your business, and advance your career. We have an amazing show for you today. And I'm going to start at the top of this by saying that many people understand that in theory, they can automate stuff in their business using AI. The people who went a little deeper understand they can build serious automations using GPTs within ChatGPT in order to achieve that. The vast majority of people don't have a clue how to do that. And from those of the people who actually are doing this and creating their own GPTs, most of us, myself included, are winging it. Meaning, I know what I need to do, I've had experience, and I'm walking through the process trying to make it work. However, like anything else in business, the right approach to this is to start with strategy and then develop a process and then go and do the thing that you're trying to do. In this particular case, creating automations that really move the needle and are efficient and driving value in your business, which is exactly what we're going to learn how to do today, step by step, by no other than Nancy Bain, who is an absolute guru and AI and business automation ninja. I'm not going to tell you how many years she's been running her business, helping businesses build efficiencies around different things, but she has been running her consultancy company, Supernova Media HQ, for a while, despite the fact that she's still 25. So this is going to be a very detailed, thought after, step-by-step process on how you should approach building automations together with GPTs to really move the needle and get stuff done in your business from a strategic approach process perspective. And we're going to dive at the end into the actual implementation and the outcomes that you can gain. So if you're looking to do anything like this, and if you're in anywhere in business, you should, this is going to be a fascinating conversation for you. And hence, I'm really honored and excited to welcome Nancy to the show. Nancy, welcome to Leveraging AI.
It's good to be here, Isar, and I meet you at the intersection of that person that user that you just described. Absolutely. Today, I'm going to show you that the shortest, most efficient distance between A and B sometimes involves a methodical framework and strategy to make happen. And so think short-term pain for long-term gain. And I
That's
don't mind
amazing.
saying, yeah, I don't mind saying how long I've been doing this. I've been a bootstrapped solopreneur for over 20 years. So finding the shortest, most efficient distance between A and B is my absolute jam. And so today I'm excited to share with you one of the tools in my toolbox, the custom GPTs, and how I manage my builds and the finished product, and including the limitations thereof, which we'll talk about. So I've got a bunch of screens to share with you. We're going to start off in my presentation, and then we'll move over into my Notion build, the back end of ChatGPT. So how does that sound?
Sounds amazing. For those of you who are with us live, either on LinkedIn or on the Zoom call. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us and freeing time on your busy days to actually be with us here. I'm monitoring both the comments on LinkedIn and the chat on the Zoom. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, if there's anything you want to contribute to the conversation, please do that. I will add that into the conversation and try to find a time to ask Nancy whatever questions that you guys have. For those of you who are listening to this only at the recording as the podcast or the YouTube channel or on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever you're consuming this, come join us. We do this almost every single Thursday at noon Eastern, where you can come and participate in these really amazing conversations with people like Nancy. Nancy, stage is yours. Take us through your amazing process.
Awesome. I'm just going to share my screen here. So, as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about custom GPTs. And first question, what are they? In a nutshell, they are personalized versions of Chat GPT. They are designed to streamline our workflow. I have 21 of them, everything from a 15-minute meal helper to a workout buddy to a schedule optimizer, long form content. They're designed for a singular task, and that's important to keep in mind with regard to their limitations. So let's talk about some of the use cases. I've mentioned some of the ways that I'm utilizing custom GPTs. Today, I'm going to be showing you my Gumroad Guide Manager. It helps me manage my Gumroad tutorials. I think I've got close to 40 tutorials over there now. And so this saves me my Gumroad Guide Manager GPT, that's a mouthful, certainly helps me save an enormous amount of time in managing that. So, what are some of the pros? We've already talked about time saving, and they boost performance and ROI in our campaigns, and they improve my decision making. I love to screenshot or download my analytics from Google Analytics, from Gumroad, from Beehive into ChatGPT and have them help me drive data-driven decisions. With custom GPTs, managing expectations is key. Okay. They're not silver bullets and they're not a generalist. And with that in mind, I polled my LinkedIn community and asked them their experience with custom GPTs. And you can see that only 10% of people are finding that they're responding perfectly. Please keep that in mind when you're using them. I've talked a lot about prompting frameworks and the recipe for the perfect prompt, but really nothing replaces iterative prompting in my experience. And the cons, I mean, no technology is flawless, and GPT is going to produce content that isn't accurate. But one of the things that I wish was different is that they're designed to solely exist within the ChatGPT interface. So you can't download them or add them to your site or host them anywhere. And also, when you're measuring the success of your GPTs, some of those KPIs aren't quantifiable. So you need to keep that in mind as well.
I want to pause you for just 1 second about this particular topic, both the pros and the cons, and give like my 2 cents on this. It's a lot about learning how to do it right, and that's what we're going to spend the session doing. Once you finesse the process, it's actually following instructions, I would say 95% of the time, when in the beginning, I probably would have answered like most of your audience saying, sometimes it follows instructions and sometimes it doesn't. And so a lot of it is figuring out how to do this. But now I reuse the same structures again and again that have proven to work. So that's how I go around that part of the problem. The other part of the problem, and we mentioned that briefly in our call before this interview, which is there is a way to actually build a similar process, meaning that they don't call them GPTs, they call them assistants, but it's the same thing, into the API. And if you do that, then you can have access to them anywhere because they're connected to the API. So now you just need some kind of a front end user interface for them. But then they could be on your website, they could be on a chat, they could be a backend for a Zapier, like whatever it is that you want to do with this, you can use them in a different way. So just, I don't want to open that topic because we can do another whole episode about that. But just
I
so
would love to do. Yes, please, to another whole episode because
So done. I'm gonna hold you accountable for what you just said. I was hoping you're gonna say that, but all I'm saying is people need to know that there is a way to get those GPTs out of the ChatGPT universe and into the rest of the world. It's a little more technical, a little more complicated, and we're not going to cover this today, but there's a way to do that.
Exactly. And that's what we offer at Supernova Media, is those custom solutions. And then you can involve your clients in their use, and they can start to service your clients, and you can streamline all of that. And so that's where it's at. And I said earlier, I've got 21 custom GPTs and one hell of a personal assistant that was created using the APIs. It's not for singular use case either. So that's absolutely. Thank you for that. So I'll look forward to another show on that. So ChatGPT, custom GPTs, there are AI actions within those. You can connect to Zapier, which further connects to 6,000 other apps, and you can use them for things like lead generation, post-purchase follow-up. It can automatically update your Google Sheets with sales data. So lots of automations are possible. Not all of my custom GPTs use automations. In fact, the ones that I have that I'm going to show you today do, but not via the custom GPT interface. This represents my custom GPT framework, and it will make more sense once we go visit Notion. And let's talk about Notion, because Notion is one of my top 3 loves, and it is where I begin all my builds. I honestly don't know how I ever functioned without Notion. I love it for a structured development process and centralized documentation. It's great for collaboration, but when I built it, I didn't realize the last bonus there that I love the most of all. It's portable now. I've got all my files. They're beautiful, all in one place. And I recently purchased a subscription to Gemini, and their equivalent to the playground and the API is the studio, their AI studio. Now my files, they're beautiful. I'm going to show you here right now. And I can take them there, and I can work with another LLM. So I love it for that. And it's funny because this quote right here is how you began your talk today. And that is, did you know that the most successful digital marketers are often the ones who master the art of deployment? And with that in mind, I'm going to go show you my Notion build for my Gumroad Guide custom GPT. Now,
I'm gonna pause you just for 1 second. For those of you who don't know
sure.
Notion, it's a universe that kind of combines task management and documentation with all their history and so on. But you can do this either with parallel tools like Monday or ClickUp or Jira or Asana, or you can just keep a Google Doc history that can achieve similar things. I highly recommend using one of the tools that is like Notion. I personally use ClickUp, but it's very similar in the things that it can do. A lot of people use Monday. It's very similar in the things that it can do. But having something like this when you're planning a project, and I think that's where Nancy's process shines. She literally created a very well-documented process that she's going to share with us right now on how to create these GPTs versus, as I mentioned, just winging them. So with that, let's dive into what you have in Notion.
Great. And just Notion has a great free version. I started in the free version, and until I brought the team in, the free version worked great for me. And if there's all kinds of free resources. In fact, if you were to go to Gumroad and type in Notion template, free Notion template, those are great ways to start using Notion by copying a template to your own Notion and using that as a framework for success. And if I told you that I didn't do that here, I'd be lying. so, so
And one
I,
last thing before you dive in, for those of you who don't know, Gumroad is like you can create your own storefront or marketplace of digital products that you can sell. These could be courses, could be training, could be basically whatever it is that you want to sell. So it creates you this storefront marketplace of digital stuff that you can sell.
and it's wonderful because, and I could do another show just on that, quite frankly, because
Let's just make it the
what do
Nancy
you
Bain series. And
okay, so back to Notion and one of my, top three loves. Let's have a look, and we're just going to have an overview of it today. So we start off with our strategy and use case, and you'll see that we've got a problem statement, a project overview, and GPT requirements. Every one of these is linked to in my Google Drive so that I can easily open them, refer to them, and iterate them. And so this is what my problem statement looks like: the issue, the solution, and the impact. And ChatGPT helped me with each one of these documents. I didn't invent this on my own. I went and discussed my goals with ChatGPT, and they helped me to define these documents. Why is it important to have these documents? Because having a custom GPT it's like prompting. It's an iterative process because you're going to launch your custom GPT today and you're going to change it 3 times in the next 30 days. And so another reason why I love linking to these files and having these files is for version control. And I recommend that you develop a good system for naming your files. Here's my Google Drive over here and how I've organized my files. In fact, Google Drive is where I began my build in organizing my files. And so name your files well, keep version control in mind. Down
So
here are
again, I
the
just want to add something about what you just said. People are like, why do I need all of this? I'm going to do 2 GPTs. Like, why do I need to start with all of that? And I think the mindset needs to be that you can start developing these automations for hundreds of things in your business. So if you have two
right.
GPTs, yeah, no problem. Like you can be messy and whatever. But if you're planning to build one for every small use case in your business, which over time we will, and it may not be GPTs, it may be something else, but having it's documented as far as what was the goal, what we're trying to achieve, what data we needed to use, like all these kind of things will allow you to continue with new tools that come out, new capabilities that show up, new platforms, new improvements, because everything is going to be consistent and everything is going to be aligned with these processes that you put in place. Add that to the fact that most companies that are going to do this are not solopreneurs. So whatever in your head is awesome, but it may not be known by the next person to you or the next department or the next division. And so having this all documented and sitting in a place that makes sense, in a structure that makes sense, with naming conventions that make sense, will allow this to scale in an effective way. So I think what you're doing is brilliant as far as looking at the bigger picture in the long term versus, yeah, I can do a GPT like right now.
You can build a custom GPT in 5 steps and a hook generator, and it can be a damn good one too. But this framework ensures that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, someone can come in and take over right where I left off. And that's important. Back to the specifications and the instructions. These are actual files that are uploaded into the back end of the custom GPT. So we use my formula structure for any of your files that are uploaded to the database. And I've got a guide on that if you want to reach out how to use. I'm a big Google Workspace user. So the guide is how to use Google Docs to manage your instruction specification files with Markdown. Here we have the training data. Everybody's training data is going to look a little bit differently. The important thing here is that I follow a consistent format for each of the documents in the training data. This is also using Markdown because these files will be uploaded into the knowledge base. So these, for me and my Gumroads, these represent the different bundles that I have, tutorials over there. I alluded to this early in the game, but model training and updates, it's a thing. And one thing I haven't mentioned already, especially in model training and down here in performance and analysis, I've got a lot of tasks and reminders set up. Again, I'm talking far more about Gemini these days because of Google Workspace, but I've been able to automate that whole process and connect it to my Notion to make sure that I'm reminded it's time to go and do a thorough test and possibly some iterating.
Can you dive a little deeper about the model training segment and what exactly you mean by that? Because this means different things to different people. And some people think that only if you're Google, you can train models, which is not true. So can you explain a little more what you mean by that?
At the very end, I've got the best practices for that. And basic, do you want them now?
No, it can wait through the end as long as you're going to answer that question.
Yeah. And so training can be as simple as going on the front end of your custom GPT and asking it to perform the functions that you've trained it to do and documenting any issues with that. Yeah. Makes sense. But I'll give you best.
I will add to that, uploading documents, references for it to use is a part of training a model. There's a lot of steps that would be considered training a model that will help it perform the tasks better.
Yeah, and links, sharing links.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is specific to my build, and I'm constantly analyzing the performance of my Gumroad tutorials. So I've got a weekly content review, monthly competitor analysis, and what these link to are prompts, actually, that they're just ready to go. And again, I get a calendar reminder that it's time to do a review, my Gumroad performance. And then so I'll go copy this prompt and put it into the GPT. I've got a couple of automations for the custom GPT, but you'll note when we get into the back end, they're not facilitated by the actions. I've got two. But they're facilitated by a Zapier, but not connected to the custom GPT. So now anytime add Gumroad subscribers to my Beehive mailing list, and then add them to my Gmail contacts. And here I've got a link to my Zaps, and that makes it convenient. Those are the two Zaps. If I need to go edit them, they're right there. So
I'm going to pause you for just 1 second. For those of you who don't know what Zapier is, Zapier is the glue that connects any software to any software that you're using. And it's a no-code automation build platform that anyone with zero experience in coding or creating automations can connect and transfer data from one app to the other. In this particular case, somebody becomes a client on Gumroad. It knows how to grab the email, first name, last name, whatever information is captured over there, and populate it in other places. In this particular case, Nancy's email marketing platform as well as just her Google account. So she has them if she wants to send them emails and so on. So you don't have to do these things manually. You can literally connect almost, let's put it this way. If you haven't heard of Zapier before, you can connect any software to any other software because they have 6,000 different connected applications at this point. And so a lot of this stuff can happen. There's two other tools that are like that. One of them is called Make. There's more than two, but the two that I use, one of them is Make, which is a little easier to use as far as user friendliness, but doesn't have as many connections and capabilities. And the other end of the scale is NA10, which is an open source, no code automation tool that is amazing, but it's a lot more technical. So if you have the technical skills, it's a great path to go. So that gives you different options.
Thanks for that. And I wanted to add that Zapier was really tough, but now they've got the prompt. So you just type in docs to calendar to Gmail, and it will design the Zap for you. So they've certainly made it a lot more user friendly. And I'm so happy to see that because it was tough. Now let's go over to ChatGPT and take a look at it in action. Let's go into the back end here.
So again, I'll pause it just for 1 second. First of all, for those not watching this, we are opening the editor for the GPTs. For those who don't know even what it is or where it exists, you go into the regular ChatGPT, so chat.openai.com, I think. And then in there on the top left button, on the top left bar, there's a button called Explore GPTs. And if you click on that, you can see all the GPTs that people are creating. And also on top of that, you'll see all of your GPTs. So you can, on the top right, create a new one, or you can click on any one of them and look at how it's actually written, or if you're creating a new one. And within there, there's always two options. You can create one, which is basically writing prompts to explain what you're trying to do, which I don't know about Nancy, but that's not what I recommend doing. The other option is to configure, which allows you to actually build it in a more structured way. Either way, you're going to end up on the configure side. I just think the first step is not very helpful. So now that I explained what we're looking at, this is what we're looking at. And now to you, Nancy, to go into the details.
And I'm going to echo that because I do not recommend the create mode at all. I'm just going to leave it at that. So
okay, we're on the same page. I think everybody now should know that's the right way to go, is to start with configure.
I go immediately to the configure mode. So there's just, I'm going to give you an overview here. And if you've been peeking at the screen, those who've been able to look at the screen, you're going to notice right away that in the instructions, I'm saying leverage the knowledge base file. And down here, check it against this file. And where's my scroller here? Refer to the knowledge base. Many times in my instructions, I am referring to these knowledge base files. And these are the knowledge base files that we looked at over in Gumroad. And these knowledge base files all have a consistent format, and they're all using Markdown. So that's my biggest complaint with the custom GPTs, is that, by the way, that they don't consistently refer to the knowledge base files. Okay, so if you here in the conversation starters, these are the first 4 prompts. I call them the leader prompts. And you've noticed I've tailored these, I've custom tailored these. Refer to the writing style. So any time that I can save a prompt by saying, I remember, I do it. Even in my conversation starters, I'm reminding the bot to refer to the knowledge base files. You will get the best results by reminding it here. You will save time by including in your prompts to check the knowledge base files here.
So I want to again pause you for just 1 second for the people who are not watching this. is
Mhm.
there are four main components, five actually, but the fifth one, I don't know if we're going to touch today, of the instructions that you're going to give or what you're going to build into your GPT. One of them is instructions, and this is basically just a very long prompt of what the GPT needs to do. The second part is called conversation starters, and these are basically you give it to somebody. If you don't have these conversation starters, people don't really know how to use the GPT. So all these are buttons that show up in your GPT, like a button that you can click, and that's going to be the first prompt that you can use, which kind of gives you an idea what you can do with this GPT. The next component is reference documents. It's called knowledge, and you can upload files to that. And these could be multiple types of files that you can upload. The interesting thing that Nancy said that I never thought about, but the more structured and consistent you make those, the easier it is for the GPT to understand the reference material that you're giving it. So those of you who don't know what Markdown is, and Nancy mentioned that several times, so I'm going to explain. Markdown is basically the code behind documents that tells it what's heading one, what's heading two, what's our numbering, what are bullets, what's a subject. Like all these things are called Markdown, and you don't have to know anything about it other than create a well-structured document. Like tell it, this is the title of the document. This is heading one. This is heading 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, heading two. And if you use that, you are using Markdown. And if you do that, when the GPT wants to understand the content, it's a lot easier for it to understand because it knows how to read Markdown. And so it understands how the document is structured and when to find different kinds of information, which will increase the chances of you getting the correct information. So that's section 3. And section 4 is basically what capabilities it needs to have. Does it need to connect to the internet? Does it need to be able to create graphics with DALL-E? And does it need to do any kind of sophisticated math or code writing? And you want to unselect all the ones you don't need because otherwise it's just overhead. And so these are the different components that Nancy's talking about. So far, you covered the main thing, which is create very well structured knowledge and then refer to it every time you can to make sure the GPT actually does.
Absolutely. And I will say you can create your instructions, copy and paste them into ChatGPT and tell it to convert it to Markdown. If you have Google Workspace, you can open up a doc and create your instructions. And there's an extension that will change that to Markdown formula. So there's some really easy ways to structure your data. Speaking of another structured data, my experience and those that I've spoken to said that the knowledge base responds better to doc files as opposed to PDF files. So I encourage you to keep that in mind. And I really liked what you said under the capabilities here. I've got all 3 capabilities ticked. And I mentioned earlier to you about best practices and troubleshooting. When you're troubleshooting, and I encourage you to deselect any of these that you're not using. And let's talk about token limits while we're here too, because these files, ChatGPT is referencing those files. So I encourage you to start new chats often. And I like to have ChatGPT summarize the conversation that we were just having. And then I take that summary into a new chat. Let's have a look on the front end and see this puppy in action.
Can we, before we do that, can you dive
Yeah.
a little bit and read some of your instructions so people understand how instructions are structured properly?
Okay, so probably best to do that from here where it's nice and neat and where my problem statement and my instructions. So this file here doesn't have a markdown applied to it. It's a lot to refer to the knowledge base.
Yeah.
Right? frankly. I specifically refer to each document, and I tell the bot what each document is. And then I tell it what I expect it to do with those documents. And see, the thing with this custom GPT is that I really don't want it to think every time. I want it to follow my instructions based on what is in the knowledge base. I want it to check my knowledge base and provide answers based on the files, based on what it knows and has learned in my knowledge base. This is a breakdown of the files and what I expect it to do. This file changes a lot, and it should have a lot of
So going back to a few things that you said that I think are critical, this is where having a Google Doc or a reference for a Google Doc in Notion or anywhere else is extremely valuable compared to just creating the GPT. Because if you want to update it and because you thought of something else, or you want to add a capability, or it's not performing as you thought consistently, knowing what was there before is not possible in the GPT itself. Once you hit save, it's gone. There's no way to roll back to the previous version. However, if you have that in a Google document, then there's the history. And if what you changed broke it and now it's not working anymore, and you want to roll back to the previous version, one way to do this is to try to remember and guess what was there before. And the other is to just go to the very well-structured process that Nancy is sharing, which means I can go back to Google Doc, go to version 6 instead of version 7, see what it was, copy, paste it back, hit save, and I'm back up and running. So this is where you start to connect the dots of the process that Nancy was showing originally, where how everything is structured to how things are actually executed that we're now going to see live. And I'll say one more thing as far as reference documents. This could be anything, right? This could be a chatbot on how to, for HR, right? How do I get another PTO? How do I apply for a maternity leave? When do I know when is my salary going to go up next time? Like all these questions that people ask HR all the time could be a simple chatbot. And all you have to do is upload your employee guidebook. And if you have other reference materials, then upload all of those. If there's any industry related specific, you can upload all these documents and then people can ask these questions. And again, the 3, 4, 5 buttons you want to create are the questions that get asked the most. So people literally just click the button and they're going to get the answer. And the only way to do this is to have these documents referenced and then in the instructions say only answer based on this document if this is the kind of question that you're getting.
Exactly. You got it. Exactly. So let's watch it work. So again, I've reminded it, refer to my writing style, and I didn't point that out in my Gumroad Guide Command Center there over on Notion, that I have established my writing style in the form of a document, and it is one of the training documents for the module for the GPT. So it's asking me to upload the tutorial. I do want to point out that I reduce the size of all my tutorials before I upload them to GPT. I have Adobe Acrobat Pro. I don't know what's out there for a free version of that, but I do encourage you to size your documents before you upload them. And already for me, it's a fail because of unlock the power, but it's done a really good job actually. Because look how the important thing is, look how close that I am. I gotta move. Can you see that black bar? It's so annoying. There we go.
Yeah, we can see that. So if you scroll up, just to explain what it's doing, it's taking a whole PDF and creating a very concise summary of what's in that PDF. So if you want to have a product that you're selling that is a digital product, you need to have a description on your website. By the way, this doesn't have to be a digital product. This could be anything that you're selling. So there could be a very long description and you want to make it concise, and this thing has a summary, an overview, objectives, what you're going to gain, like all these things, very well done, all written by this GPT based on the long PDF that actually explains the whole thing.
So exactly. So what I did was I uploaded one of my tutorials, and I don't get ChatGPT to help me write my tutorials. That is what they help me with so many things. When my tutorials are step by step, I don't I do that by myself. So what I've done is I've uploaded one of my tutorials, and I've got my optimized prompt, I call it, because this is like a couple of prompts in one, and a reminder to check the knowledge base file, and a reminder to ask me to upload. So I've saved a few keystrokes there, I'm sure, just by optimizing my prompt. And it has followed if you were to see the instructions and read them clearly, it has followed it to the letter. Unlock the power. If that's all I've got to change. I have a personal aversion to phrases like that, but I must say that most of my readers are not immersed in it like I am, so they're still excited by Unlock the Power.
Yeah.
So I've asked for it to provide me with a description, with a summary, and I told it I wanted bullet points and benefits. Who's this for? It's followed the format absolutely exactly. And I've even asked it, one of the knowledge base files was a call to action, because I get sick of typing out my links all the time, so I can over in Gumroad. So these are all live and ready to go. And I take a look at this, and if I spent less than probably 5 minutes editing that before it's ready to go over on Gumroad. So that is.
So I want to touch on something very important to what you just said, because people who are new to this are saying, "Oh my God, this is so much work. Like, I got to build the thing in Notion. I got to write the documents in Google Docs and keep their history. Then I got to go to GPT. I got to build the GPTs. I got to test the GPTs. I could have just written the damn instructions, which is like 25 minutes instead of 5 minutes. But creating all this GPT is taking me 3 hours. Now, the reality is that is true the first time. The second time you do this, now every time you want to create a new one of those, it takes you 5 minutes and sometimes 30 seconds if it's perfect the first time out. And if it takes you 30 seconds to 5 minutes to do a work that usually takes you 25 minutes, and it's something you do several times a week, in week 3, you're already in positive ROI on investing those 3 hours of putting this GPT together. So don't build GPTs for something you do once in a blue moon, but if it's something that you do regularly, either in your personal life or in your professional life, a repetitive, tedious task, you can stop doing it almost completely by creating a GPT that does it for you. This could be summarizing meetings in a specific format. This could be writing a financial summary based on a specific format. This could be doing your HR reports in a specific, like each and every one of those things that goes across departments, because everybody in business has the tedious stuff they just need to do that takes X amount of time of their week. All of that can go away if you develop a GPT that does it. And if you do it in a well-structured way, you'll be able to continuously improve on it and fix it as things change and improve and move forward in this whole automation universe.
100%. You nailed it. Yeah. I love my custom GPTs, and I looked at my week, my month, and my Trello and my calendar, and I know where my time was being spent. And then I built a solution for each pain point, and Gumroad was one of them. So this has absolutely streamlined the process for me. And I'll always write my own tutorials, so I'm not going to streamline that process. Another thing that I do, and another one of my conversation starters, is I do upload my guide once I've completed it and ask for feedback. And yeah, so that is it. Now you have it. The
Yeah, this
framework
is
for
awesome.
success.
This is awesome. I want to, now that we talked about how to start the process, how to build it strategically, how to create it in a way that is scalable, and how to create the GPTs and how they work. There's an interesting question from the audience that came in the beginning, but I'm like, okay, let's start crawling and then walking, and then I can ask the running question. One of the running question is, do you combine GPTs with Zapier in any way? Like, do you bring GPTs into Zapier, or do you use a Zapier API as a schema within GPTs in order to even enhance this further?
Yes, and I've done that for the first GPT I ever built was called PyPilot, and it takes you on a guided Python course for absolute beginners. And this was a challenging build because it's similar to the Gumroad guide build, and that I didn't want it to think. I wanted every user to have the exact same experience. I did not
Yep.
want it to deviate from the script. And so that was a challenge in and of itself. And then I used Zapier to collect leads. It was the one and only GPT I published to the store. It got copied 6 times on the first day. And I said I'd never publish another one to the GP store ever again. And so I've used it to collect leads from everything. Do you want a more intense course? And I gather their email address. And I even used it to buy me a coffee link. So there's some lots of clever ways that you can use Zapier for sure.
So
Yeah.
how do you do that? What's the practicality process? How do you connect Zapier to a GPT?
Just exactly like you said, by a schema in the API. And so yeah, I've got a tutorial on that step by
Awesome.
step.
So I'll explain on a very high level, and those of you who want, so something we'll do for all of the questions, people like, oh, I would love to have that. Like, can I get this tutorial? All these tutorials are available on Nancy's Gumroad website. So I will share a link to that in the show notes, both on the YouTube channel as well as on the podcast show notes. So it's going to be available for you to get all of these instructions. But in general, for those of you who don't know what schema means, APIs are the language in which one software can talk to another software. And a schema basically defines the language, how they're going to connect. Now, that sounds really complicated, but the reality is, if you will just Google, I need the schema for Zapier to put into a GPT in order to connect Zapier to do that, you will get a piece of code that means absolutely nothing to you. But all you need to do is copy, paste it on the very bottom part of the GPTs. There's a section to put in the schema. You hit save, and it's going to magically work. And I do now more and more of that kind of stuff where I would sometimes even take that code that I know exactly, I don't have a clue what it means, and I will put it into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and say, hey, I want to add this to that. Here's the documentation of the API. So I don't know what the documentation means, and I don't know what the schema means, but I'm asking it to, on its own, figure out something from the documentation and ask it and add it to the schema. So now the API can do one more thing, and it will write a new code, and then you copy that code and you paste it. And 80% of the time it works the first time around. And then if it doesn't, you're like, okay, I'm getting this error message. What do I need to change? And then you go, oh, okay, here's another piece of code that's going to fix this error. And you just go back and forth 2 or 3 times, and that's it. Once you have it working. So going back to the Zapier thing, then you can do a lot smarter stuff because you can literally call a Zap, a specific Zap that's already pre-created. You can call it from the GPT. So the GPT, the automation within the ChatGPT universe, can now connect to anything that Zapier is connected to. So if you want to update Excel files, you want to update your CRM, you want to grab information from your ERP, you want to get a document, like literally anything you can imagine from your tech stack can now become available to the GPT and then reported back from the GPT back to Zapier to connect to other platforms. So this is a really advanced use case, but it's an advanced use case that with, I'll go very extreme, an hour of watching YouTube videos, you can figure out how to do. And once you know how to do this, you can create really serious magic.
And it's probably not going to work the first time, but
It's probably
that's
not going to work
okay.
the first time. Yeah.
And I
As I
could, the
mentioned,
way
if
that
it's, no, go ahead. Sorry.
the way that you described it, I could see you building it with your own hands and going through the exact same things that I've gone through.
Yeah.
100%, the same steps exactly. I share I share guides on, again, back to Google Workspace, on how to build scripts to automate key processes for bootstrap solopreneurs. That just makes a huge difference in your life. And people will say, oh my gosh, code. That was a prompt to chat GPT that I copied and pasted, and now look. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid anymore when it says code. There's too many solutions out there to help you overcome that.
Phenomenal. Nancy, this was fascinating. I think your process is absolutely brilliant. I think it covers so many very important aspects that even people who are advanced users, myself included, are not thinking of, like the whole structure, putting a process in Notion or whatever tool you're using, having your whole history of the GPTs within a document that has a history, like all of those things are things I'm not doing. And I'm sure 95% of people who are creating these are not doing. And those people are probably less than 1% of the entire population of the world today. So if you feel that this was like, oh my God, this sounds really complicated, but you are still here to listen to it to figure out how to do this, you are in the top 1% in the world. And if you invest a little more, hint, go and get the tutorials from Nancy Rhodes' website on how to exactly do each and every one of those things. You'll be able to do it yourself. And then it opens a whole universe of automations that you can create for your business. Nancy, this was awesome. If people want to follow you, work with you, get access to your Gumroad stuff, what are the best ways to do that?
You can visit my website at supernovamedia.ca, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I hang out there on the daily. It's easy to reach me there as well. And I share lots of good stuff there. If you're there to learn, especially about AI, I recommend you follow me.
Awesome. I recommend that too. Thank you very much for everybody who joined us on LinkedIn. There were a bunch of people, lots of great engagement over there. Thank you for all the people who joined us on the Zoom call. I appreciate you joining us as well. And obviously, thank you so much, Nancy, for prepping all of this. I know this doesn't come out of thin air. You invest a lot of time in creating this. So thank you so much for sharing it with us, for sharing it with the entire audience. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. We'll do some more of these, diving into additional topics. Thank you.